Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome to our webinar. I'm Paris Childress, CEO of Hop Online, and joining me is Delcho, and he's our head of PPC and analytics here at Hop Online. And today we're going to be talking about a surprisingly simple solution using Google Analytics measurement protocol to achieve a lower cost per acquisition. And this is hopefully going to be something that you all will take away and be able to implement right away and have a great impact on your businesses. So I'll now go into my presentation here. Okay. Hopefully now my presentation's coming up. Everybody can see it. So today we're really focusing on a solution which will ultimately lower customer acquisition cost using better analytics. And the way we're going to be doing this is, this is really about demystifying one of the advanced functionalities of Google Analytics, which is called the Google Analytics Measurement Protocol. So this is me and Delcho, as we've just introduced ourselves, and we're going to be co-moderating the webinar today. And just a few housekeeping rules before we dive into this. We have a live chat feature here on the webinar. So if anybody wants to ask or just wants to chat with a message, you can either use the chat or you can use the questions tab and just post your question directly there. And we will be able to see those in real time, and we'll be looking at those, and we'll be prepared to answer those right at the end. Polls, we probably won't be using the polls today. So pretty straightforward. So let's get into it. The webinar today is really intended for B2B SaaS marketers, because B2B SaaS marketers normally are managing the customer acquisition cost, or the CAC. And this means they're probably managing complex conversion cycles and complex customer lifetime value calculations. But we also feel that this could be very helpful for other people that are either digital marketers or people who work with digital marketers. Digital marketers outside of software as a service still oftentimes struggle with bridging online conversion data with offline data, such as offline revenue. And this solution will help you all. Backend developers also who are working with digital marketing teams, this is also something that we feel could be very valuable for you all. And digital analytics professionals that are just looking to sharpen their skills and learn a little bit about one of the advanced features of Google Analytics and apply that to their company or job. So the agenda today really is, first of all, to lay out the challenge that most B2B SaaS marketers are facing when it comes to stitching together a complex customer journey and trying to unify that journey. And we'll present the solution and then give you really a roadmap for how to get started with this solution. And then we'll address Q&A at the end. So a lot of you out there may be feeling like you're between a rock and a hard place. And I imagine that the rock may be that your marketing budgets are under pressure right now. They may have been downsized, or there may just be a lot more pressure to get more out of those budgets. And the hard place is that you still have all of the expectations you had before to keep growing the business and to keep acquiring new customers at the same pace that you had been going on. Maybe you have co-founders or even investors that want to see continuous growth. So you probably have to do more with less. And this is a tough position to be in. And in a lot of cases, it would really urge you all to look for creative solutions that maybe you haven't been using so far. And even before the world started changing a couple of months ago, SaaS marketing was pretty hard already, because you have to deal with a lot of these acronyms and KPIs that are pretty unique for SaaS businesses, such as the payback period on the CAC, and the lifetime value and the churn rate from people either that are in a free trial period or maybe that are already in your customer base. And everything that comes along with that, because you have a very dynamic life cycle of a customer, even before they're acquired, at the point of acquisition, and then beyond, upselling them and cross-selling them, and constantly trying to maximize the ratio between lifetime value and customer acquisition cost. The reality that most of you face and know very well is that many of the trial users that you pay to acquire actually won't wind up buying. They won't wind up even making the first payment. And they probably are going into a trial really not even intending to make that first payment. And there is this so-called SaaS trial chasm, where the actual paying customers that are left after the trial period are far fewer than the trial users that started off in that same cohort. And many of you would probably prefer even to pay more for acquiring the customers directly rather than paying for all these trial users and wondering what percentage of them won't cross this chasm. And our solution is intended to try to help you do that. So a lot of you probably do have this realization that there is a chunk of your budget, and maybe a big chunk of your budget every month, that gets wasted because you know that some of these people are going to churn, and you're always trying to figure out how to weed them out of your campaigns. And you still need to scale, and it makes it difficult to achieve scale when you have this leaky bucket, when you know that a certain portion of people that you're paying to acquire as trial users aren't going to stick with the product, aren't going to become high lifetime value customers. And you're carrying this persistent waste as you try to scale, and it's really holding you back. If we look across the aisle at e-commerce, some of you may think that e-commerce marketers have it easier, and maybe even in some cases, it seems that they may be just printing money because they're able to really precisely target their marketing campaigns on online transactions that are fully measurable right there on their website, which means that you don't really have a free trial period. You don't really have to worry about churn rates and waiting for people, whether or not they're going to make that first payment or not. And things seem more black and white here. They seem easier. E-commerce is often based on a more controlled return on ad spend calculation. And e-commerce marketers, they have added complexity because probably they are offering thousands or maybe tens of thousands of unique product SKUs across lots of categories. So maybe the return on ad spend calculation can be complex when you have that many products. But for the purposes of marketing, a lot of e-commerce marketing is really set up with ROAS goal in mind, which is that you want to achieve a certain return based on the gross profit margin of each individual product. And if you know the cost of goods sold and you pretty much have an idea of that gross margin, then you can fix a particular return on ad spend, and you can tell your marketing platforms to achieve that ad spend. Whereas SaaS marketing is more based on CAC, customer acquisition cost. And you're hoping that those customers that you acquire week in and week out are going to have a high lifetime value and therefore will deliver a high return on that ad spend. But often you don't know it until much later into the future, whereas an e-commerce marketer usually has better visibility at the point of sale. But what if SaaS marketing could be more like e-commerce marketing? And that's what we're going to try to suggest here. What if you as a SaaS marketer could target a return on ad spend in your digital marketing campaigns as opposed to, let's say, target CPA, and then let the AI robots get to work and let them figure out how to find those customers that will deliver a fixed return on ad spend? Wouldn't that be really nice? So this would mean really no more sweating churn rates. The the churn rates that come, especially within that free trial period. No more paying for tire kickers, and really alleviating a lot of the headaches around merging data manually across several platforms. You probably have, of course, your ad platform, you have analytics platforms, you might have payment platforms, you might have a CRM, and there's customer data flowing through all those platforms. And some of you may be merging that data manually, and that's quite a hassle. Well, now you can, with the solution that we're going to present here in this webinar. And in fact, the solution has been there all along. It's been really right under our noses, like this cookie, and it does involve cookies. And it's the Google Analytics measurement protocol. So that you really need 4 things prepared in order to get this done. First of all, you should have a pretty good understanding or an approximation of your average customer lifetime value. Some of you are tracking that really well and have a very good understanding of that. But if you don't, as a fallback, a lot of SaaS marketers use annual contract value as a starting point to try to measure the return on ad spend based on your customer acquisition cost. But the better that you do know or are starting to figure out customer lifetime value, that's really going to help you here to understand a precise ROAS. Second is campaigns that have at least 50 new buyers or 50 new customers acquired within a 30-day period. This is important because there is a minimum threshold of data that's required for these algorithms to work and to do their thing properly. And third, a basic working knowledge of Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, because you will be working or a colleague may be working to set this up in Google Analytics and in Google Tag Manager. And fourth, this is optional but recommended, is a nice bottle of whiskey to bribe your favorite back-end developer, because the back-end developer here is a really critical player in all of this. What you will get ultimately, if and when this works, is you'll be able to report on your marketing based on a return on ad spend as opposed to customer acquisition cost. And this is an actual report from one of our SaaS clients who we've implemented this solution for, that is showing net revenue on a weekly cohort basis and the ad spend that is lagged. In this case, it's lagged by a 3-week period because the trial period is 3 weeks long. But we've essentially matched up the revenue from a weekly cohort of customers to the same week that those customers were acquired and the ad spend that was deployed during the week of acquisition for those customers. And we can see very clearly, because we're using the Google Analytics measurement protocol to bring in offline data and to bid in digital marketing campaigns for those events, we can now actually see a pretty precise return on ad spend. And this looks really nice. It really looks very nice for stakeholders and investors to get a much clearer view. Your founders and investors will get better clarity, because once you all have a better understanding of return on ad spend and how much that is scalable, then your roadmap ahead for how to grow becomes a lot clearer. So this is really a huge benefit for founders and investors that are really trying to understand how to scale the business and how quickly to scale the business using digital marketing as a main driver. So what we're suggesting here is you as marketers to really step back a little bit and let Google do what Google does best. And that means really leveraging all the power of AI and machine learning that Google has developed. And I think about Google's AI as a heat-seeking missile. And you as a marketer just need to set a very clear goal and direct that heat-seeking missile at that goal. And eventually it will zigzag in trying to figure out how to hit that target, but eventually it will hit that target much better and more efficiently than any army of mathematicians or statisticians, just because of the sheer power and efficiency of machine learning. And what we're trying to do is direct this heat-seeking missile not at the acquisition of trial users, but at the acquisition of customers, paying customers. And if Google does what Google does best, then you as the marketer can do what you do best, which is to focus more on strategy, on audience building and audience segmentation, on messaging to those particular segments and message differentiation, and on testing. So these are the things where I believe that human marketers will always be very, very relevant and very, very necessary. And the more that you all as marketers can do this and worry less about the micromanagement of campaigns and manual bid adjustments, then that's really going to drive things forward much faster, we think. So this involves really a mindset of setting your keywords and yourself free in a sense, because when you allow, in this case, Google Ads, we're referring to mostly, when you allow automated bidding, which is driven by AI, to take place, you're really allowing the platform to bid at the actual search query level as opposed to the keyword level. So when you play this all the way through, you really don't need to set up campaigns anymore according to different types of keyword match types, like the classic exact match, phrase match, and broad match. You really can just set up campaigns based on other types of segmentation, audience segmentation that you've developed from your insights, and then just give really a basic set of broad match keywords to those campaigns and let the AI algorithms do their thing. Let them really figure out the intent behind every single search query and then match that up with the right type of an ad and figure out how to deliver on the goals that you've set, in this case, a target CPA or a target return on ad spend bid. And I mentioned this Google Analytics measurement protocol. This is the actual solution that will empower you to make this transition with these campaigns. And there is pretty good documentation for this. You have to dig a little bit deep into Google Analytics online documentation, but there is quite detailed documentation for your developer to go through and really understand how to implement it. And there's a link here in the deck, which will be shared later. We also have a blog post that we published a couple of weeks ago that is on this same topic that's a little bit easier to digest. So if anything is not clear from this webinar, or if you want to have a document that you can share, this would be a good reference for that also. So wait a second before we move on. You might be wondering, well, what about the attribution problem? Is this going to help solve the attribution problem? And just to discuss what that means for those of you that are not familiar, attribution is really how you assign credit for a conversion across different channels that were involved in the path to that conversion. So oftentimes, especially with complex buyer journeys, people will be exposed to several, not only ads across different channels, but also different organic touch points along that journey. They might see something on YouTube. They might go into a research process and interact with several paid and organic links that bring them to landing pages. They may get involved in email journeys. They may click on links from referral sites. But when you have multiple channels involved and then you have a conversion, it's not fair really to give all the credit or the value of that conversion to just that last touch point, which often cases is let's say search. So the attribution problem still persists. And the attribution problem is not fully solved by this solution, but it is alleviated in some way, because when you have greater visibility into the return on ad spend and the true ROI of your marketing, then it makes it easier to actually make channel allocation testing decisions. So you might decide to shift a certain percentage of budget from Google to Facebook or from Facebook to Google, and very quickly you will be able to see the overall impact on the return on ad spend from that decision. So this will help you make better decisions for channel allocation. You won't have a full solution for attribution, but you will be able to make better decisions about how to allocate your budget. So if you are ready to try this from home and ready to get started, I'm going to turn it over to Delcho here to actually walk you through the specifics of the GA measurement protocol.
Hey, yeah, so what we usually get with just the default Google Analytics settings is just the user online journey. And this is what we've been talking about. You basically get the channels that bring the traffic to your website. You see people starting the free trial, and this goes to Google Analytics. But then this is where the data ends basically, and you of course have the full customer journey, most of which is offline, where you see people becoming customers. You're having recurring revenue, cancellations, churn, and so on. So these things you would want to bring back to Google Analytics so you can make all of the adjustments and calculations that we just have been talking up until now. So here's the 5 steps basically that you need to go through to get this implemented. First, and this is a very important step, is to just to implement the user ID functionality in Google Analytics. And this is more or less a simple step. You need to send back to Google Analytics through a small adjustment in the tracking code the user IDs that you use internally in your system. So whenever there's recurring revenue or other offline events happening and you would want to send them back to Google Analytics, you have this ID to unify all of the sessions and all of the events under this single user. Then the second step would involve some development, and this is actually the only step that would require a developer. And this is where you need to, get your payment platform, your backend, like data warehouse, and other like CRM and other platforms that you use to track basically the journey, the revenue, and all of the perhaps some additional customer like actions and events that need to be sent back to Google Analytics. And here's where the measurement protocol comes in. It basically sends these HTTP requests. They're almost like loading a page from your backend that sends the data to Google Analytics. So these need to be like defined, set up, and executed by a developer. So once the data starts coming into Google Analytics, as a next step, you need to verify that everything is working as it should and that the numbers are correct. So at this point, you just compare transaction data in Google Analytics to your payment platform. And once you've confirmed that this is correct, you can start building out your reports like the one we showed in the previous slides. And for this, we most often use Google Data Studio. That, of course, is up to you. So then once this is all implemented and you've confirmed that everything is working correctly, you can start, of course, just getting the data into Google Analytics and sending it over to Google Ads. So this is basically importing the goals and transactions from Google Analytics to Google Ads. And you'll be seeing their recurring revenue or like offline revenue streams coming in associated with the users that you acquire through Google Ads. And once the data starts coming in there and you have the required number of transactions or conversions, as we mentioned earlier, it's 50. It's actually 30, but we recommend around 50 for the algorithms to learn faster. So then you can switch from target CPA or whatever bidding strategies you're using to target return on ad spend. And then you can just optimize for acquiring customers than just acquiring trials. And hopefully this would, bring your results up. So this is kind of what you'll be seeing in Google Analytics once the data starts coming in. So you'll be seeing each individual user, the number of like sessions and events that have been associated with the user, and the revenue, which if you have recurring revenue, it will be growing over time. You'll be able to calculate lifetime value based on each individual user and segment by channel and all kinds of everything that's available in Google Analytics. And this slide, I'll show you an overview of how the data would flow. So in a typical journey, as we saw in the online journey, usually the data comes in from the website or app directly to Google Analytics, and then you send it to Google Ads. Then separately, you have a payment provider which gets the data again from website or app. In a perfect world, in a best case scenario, you also have a data warehouse where you send engagement data and user data from the website and app to the data warehouse. You can even send the financials from the payment provider to the data warehouse as well, so you combine everything in one single place. And then using the measurement protocol, you get all of this data and send it back to Google Analytics and consequently back to Google Ads. So this is basically the way the data flows. So these are the extra steps which would give you this better visibility. So once you have this, what's next? And it's basically the waiting, which is the hardest part. Once the campaigns have been turned to target CPA or target ROAS in the case that we're looking you just need to wait a certain time for these specific steps. And this is actually a slide from a presentation by Google about their automated bidding. So basically, you start with a couple of weeks of control period where you compare the current bidding strategy to the new one. Then you need to wait. Basically, it's the first whole month where you need to wait for the learning process also to kick in. Then you need, again, after about 4 weeks, you can start comparing and the results of the different bidding strategies. And once these come in, so this is now like 6 to 8 weeks, you need to then wait for the conversion delay. So if your free trial is a month, let's say, you need to wait another month so you have the revenue data in before you can make the an educated decision. And after this, you have the all the necessary data to evaluate and adjust any targets and basically move on to 100% target ROAS bidding. So as you can see, the whole process might take, depending on the free trial period as well, like 2 months. But once you're through this, hopefully it would be just, as we mentioned, improving strategy and improving results while the algorithm does the hard part. And here on this slide, we want to show how volume basically affects the learning speed. So the previous slide is based on low, like as we suggested, about 50 conversions a month, low volume of data. But of course, if the data is more, the learning period will be faster and also the algorithm will be more effective. So as you can see, for example, if you have 500 conversions a month, the CPA fluctuation would be very low and the learning period would be very fast. So it all depends on just the volume of traffic and volume of conversions that you're getting. So this solution is, of course, better, would be more effective for people with high volume, but also, anything above 30 would still work. It just would take more time. And Paris will get back here to recap.
Hi, everyone. So what Delcio had just covered in that last slide, we have a quiz that you can take, and we'll send this right after the webinar, that you can take to just gauge your readiness for the Google Analytics measurement protocol. And it's based on a few factors, but mostly it does come down to the volume of data that you're able to bring in. So I wanted to recap and really wrap this up with this final full solution picture because I wanted to put what we've discussed today into a broader perspective. Most of what we talked about today is step one here, which is improving conversion inputs and attribution. And this is a really, really important step to ultimately get you where you want to go. But there are several more steps, and I think that this is too much to cover all in one webinar, and these might be topics of future webinars, but I do want to reference them so you can put this into the bigger picture. After you're finished with the Google Analytics measurement protocol, and hopefully it puts you in a position to bring in the offline data and start adjusting your targeting for those customer acquisition events, then part of that is also looking at the correct strategy for each campaign, because most likely your account structure and your campaign structure might be set up for a solution that's more related to either manual bidding or bidding for trial users. So it's about really also assessing campaign by campaign which campaigns are really suitable and ready for the solution. And number three is then focusing on your audience and cleaning up your audience strategy. So the more data that you do have on your customers would allow you to do audience segmentation. And that's also data that can be brought in through the Google Analytics measurement protocol for the purpose of creating remarketing audiences. And we haven't talked much about this in today's webinar, but this is another really tremendous benefit of using the Google Analytics measurement protocol. And that is to be able to bring in audience data of your customers and then set up remarketing lookalike audiences in your current campaigns for people who look like those segments. So for example, you might have a segment of your most profitable customers lifetime, and you can bring that segment in through the Google Analytics measurement protocol. You can bring that user data into Google Analytics in order to create an audience for that in Google Analytics, which then can serve as an audience for a similar audience in Google Ads or a lookalike audience in Facebook. Okay, number 4, moving up this ladder, is de-restricting your targeting and your budgets. And we talked about this a little bit on a previous slide, which is really lifting the barriers around specific keyword match types and really thinking more about just going in with broad match keywords and allowing Google to have more discretion about inferring searcher intent and matching up and bidding appropriately to get your goals met. And it also means de-restricting or lifting any budget limitations that you have. So hopefully, once you are able to really prove and demonstrate a concrete return on ad spend, you should be able to hopefully win more budgets, and any campaigns that are working well that are limited by budget, naturally we would recommend lifting those ceilings and scaling as fast as possible. And finally, the ultimate solution that we want you as the marketer to be in is to be able to spend more time optimizing and doing the creative and strategic work, which is really trying to figure out how to better match up a message with a particular audience segment and build really, really awesome creatives around that match. So this is the broader solution. Really improving conversion inputs and attribution is the first step. And that brings us to the end of the webinar. I hope that this has been interesting. I hope that some of you are ready to dive in and go get that bottle of whiskey for your developer and get things started. So with that, I think now we can move to Q&A. So I'll go back out of the screen share and we'll look at Q&A here. Let's see.
You're still sharing.
Yep. All right. Okay. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes while hopefully some questions roll in. Right. All right. Well, I think it doesn't look like there are any questions right now. maybe everything was just crystal clear from our presentation. Hopefully, those of you listening, hopefully the wheels are turning and you're thinking about how you might be able to apply this with different types of data that you have housed in different places. Maybe you have CRM data, maybe you have data in your payment platform, and this would be great to unify that data and unify the customer journey. Let's see, I'll check also the chat, but nobody's chatting here either. So I think that, I guess no questions, so we can wrap it up. So thank you all very much for tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, also thanks for watching the replay. I hope this has been valuable. And we're available if you want to reach out and get more information and talk more about these solutions. We'd be happy to help. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And hopefully see you on the next webinar.
Bye-bye.
So long.